Guys, it's morning here in San Francisco. I've got a nice big cup of coffee and I'm sitting at my piano. I thought today we'd go ahead and take the ISF file that we've been developing and put it through its paces in VDMX. Now I'm using my piano as a data source, both its audio, I'm using audio analysis, so the audio amplitude coming off the piano itself. But then my piano is also enabled with MIDI. So it also sends out a MIDI signal that I'm able to use as data source inside VDMX. Obviously, you don't need a MIDI-enabled piano to do any of these things. You can use whatever data source you want, including a MIDI controller or OSC or the like, all the cool things that VDMX can do. This first preset that we're taking a look at here is inspired by Pierre Mondrian. And so let's see, let's just do a quick Google search for Mondrian. There we go. I'm sure you're probably familiar with this work. It's pretty famous work. I thought it'd be fun to use ShapeMaker to recreate some of this look. So what I've got here are some colors here and some rectangles that we've created. And I've modified my ShapeMaker a little bit. I've definitely piled on some oscillators here, so it's oscillating back and forth, just as we've covered in the modules. I can't profess exactly this particular formula. I just kept adding sine waves and multiplying them on top of one another until I got a result that I liked. I think this experimentation is all part of the fun. But it's essentially, there's oscillators in both the position and the time in values. So that's what's causing these rectangles to kind of oscillate back and forth. You'll also notice that I have some audio analysis happening on the scale of these rectangles. And then additionally, if I play a note, it'll trigger a color and trigger a color change. And you guys can see that in there as well. So let's just play some, we'll just play some notes here. And I'm gonna probably mess up on the piano a lot. The point hopefully isn't piano performance, but for you guys to just see that I can trigger whatever I like. Cool. So let's learn how to go ahead and make this from scratch using VDMX and our ShapeMaker ISF file. So let's see how we could build this thing up from scratch. I've got a preview window here down here in the bottom, but other than that, that's actually the only plugin I have is the standard plugins that you'd start when you just first create a new VDMX project file, the media bin and the clock, and this preview coming in from my iPhone. Okay, so the first thing we're going to need to do is load in our ISF ShapeMaker, which I've done here inside the media bin, and then I'm just going to go ahead and trigger it here into layer 1. Now I've got a few of the kind of presets already going on in here, but let's take a quick look at some of the settings there on ISF. If I come into layer and come into layer 1, the first thing I'm going to do is tear off layer 1 source so that we can take a look at the settings. I've already adjusted my colors here, the colors that I want for the Mondrian look. The only thing I think I'm going to adjust is my stroke color up to white. And then I've already preset in some of the values here, but let me just quickly show you. Let's just reset these values so that we can get something like this look together. You'll also notice that there's some num effects chains on here. Can be some pretty useful num effects chains for us, and I'll be sure to go through those. Okay, so the first thing to know is that my time in is controlling the stepping through theta on my oscillator. That's giving me this result, and then I've got a frequency and an amplitude slider as well that I'm also just multiplying with by theta. So if my amplitude is down at 0, then they all go to the center and they don't receive any of the oscillator. I noticed that I think my stroke size is a little thick, so I'm going to reduce it in size a bit. Okay, so I want to create a background for this, so I'm actually just going to create another layer. And this other layer I'm going to use as a source another ISF file, which is just going to be a solid color. That gives us that. I need to make sure that, let's see, this is 1920 by 745, so I want to make sure that size is also 1920 by 745 to match it. This aspect ratio and resolution is just enough to kind of have something here at the top of my MacBook Pro screen and some interface down here at the bottom. It's nothing special. Okay, so let me reduce this too, because this isn't that important right now. So one thing right away that I want to do is start getting data off my piano. So I'm going to come into my plugins and I'm going to create a control surface. And this control surface, I want to have, I think, two generic kind of data sources. First, I think I want to have a slider kind of so I can control a 0 to 1. And then I want to have a button. And the buttons, I can just listen for whatever whatever MIDI button press I want, but I think I'm going to make a really generic one that just is every time you press a key, it triggers something. So that seems really simple to make. So I'm going to come here to the control surface, and I want to add a button, and this button is going to be on. We want to add what it is receiving, so let's go ahead and let's hit detect, and we are going to detect some MIDI. And let me turn that on. Okay, so there's note 48. A couple quick things. I have to say ignore repeats and toggle on rise. Actually, I want this to be just value from input. This means that it's just a 1 when there we go. So I don't want to, just one when I hold it down, it's on, and when it's off, just like that. So rather than a toggle, which means it's going to turn off both times, value from input just means it's just going to get a straight value of 0 and 1. Great, so okay, so we need to do that basically 88 times for 88 keys. Okay, well that was fun. Every single time I hit a button, it's going to trigger one of these notes. I've got all the MIDI notes in now. Now I can have a lot of fun with this. So I think the first thing I want to do with this key trigger is I want to have the background change every single time I press a note. So there's lots of ways to do this, but since we're using VDMX, let's have some fun with VDMX. What I'm going to go ahead and do is come in here to plugins. I'm going to create a step sequencer. The step sequencer, you can use all kinds of different data type in the step sequencer. I'm going to go ahead and change mine to color. And these colors, I'm going to sample the colors that I have here already built into my ShapeMaker. Red, white, orange, cream, and looks like a bluish green. There we go. So I've mirrored these colors. Now, of course, I could build another control surface with colors and have all of these tied to a color data source if I want to. And then, let's see, I want to have every time I push a button, it just kind of goes forward a measure, right? So I'm going to put this on point. Let's put this right in the middle there. And then let's have it move forward. I'm going to come in here to my UI inspector. This goes between 0 and 2, and actually I only want this to go to 5. So I'm going to come to columns, and I don't need 8 of these. I'm going to change my number of columns to 5 columns. And I'm going to sequence these right like this, so I have sequences between these different colors. Which then I'm going to put 0.25 here, so it's halfway through each color. And if I pause to think for a moment about what increment this should be, that actually, let's see, it's 2 divided by 5. Which gives me 0.4. There we go. So a value of 0.4 is what I want to increment, and that'll get a nice in the middle of all these little colors. Great. Okay, so then let's have this drive that background color here inside layer 2. I want to have it drive that guy. I can just control drag straight from there to there. And so now, and I want this to be driven by that, the control surface one that I just made. So let's have that happen. Cool. And now it's stepping through all of the colors. Every time I hit a button, it steps through my color palette. All right. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Let me just shrink that down for now, put that over on the corner. I'm gonna hide that background color layer 2 source for now. And now the next thing I want to do is with my control surface is I'm going to build a slider so that I can kind of control value ranges. Like I think it'd be pretty cool to be able to control this amplitude based on the frequency. So when I click down here lower, it'll be a lower frequency, and when I click up here higher, it'll drive this slider right here. Either frequency or amplitude, I haven't decided yet. So when I come to my control surface, I'm going to need another slider. Great. Now the slider, what I'm going to do is just create some marks in here. You create as many marks as you want. So I'm going to say, like, let's say if I wanted if I wanted 8 notes of an octave on just the white keys, I would click this 8 times, and then I would come here to continuous, and I would hit detect, and then let's do. All right, and we've got some MIDI values, 48 through 60 there, and now if I just hit auto space marks, you notice it auto spaces all of those marks between the slider, so that's pretty cool. So now I can go ahead and trigger those different marks. And what I'm going to do then is come here to my let's come to amplitude, and let's make sure that is being driven by my slider, right like that, and let's test it out. Okay, the amplitude is getting way too big, so I'm going to command drag it to control kind of my max. Cool. So I've got this just for an octave, but if I want to do this with 88 keys, obviously I have to click this 88 times and then hit continuous. Again, you guys probably don't want to see me do that, but I have already done it. And when you have done these things, you can export your control surface as a JSON. So here, notice here it says export JSON layout, and I can give this a name like piano to JSON, and then I can import it. So you don't have to do this over and over and over again, or save it with individual VDMX files. So since I've already done this, I'm going to come to import JSON file, and I've got my piano map01.json. I'll open it on up, and look at that, it's all done for me already. So this is like the Martha Stewart puts the turkey in the oven thing and then takes the cooked one out. Great, so let's come here then to this key range, and let's drive the amplitude with that, and this is a much larger value range. Actually, I think I cut off the bottom and top octaves. Great. Okay, so we've got these two little data sources. We can just plug them in, kind of wherever we want. But let's go ahead and let's create another data source that's going to be useful for this preset. Let's create a new plugin. I'm going to create an audio analysis plugin, so this will actually analyze the audio coming in. And let's have the let's have time in be driven by that. Do I want to have that be driven by audio? I want that to be a persistent value. So I'm going to do that trick we learned earlier. I'm going to come here to plugins. I'm going to create an LFO. And the LFO, I would just want to have its waveforms be driven by the rate, be driven by the amount of audio. So this is a great way to create oscillators or persistent values that are attenuated by another data source. And in this case, typically I like to use audio analysis. So that sounds all complicated. Don't worry. Just notice that this is a value that's always going up. That LFO right there, right? Just the ramp. And if I control drag and put it into time in, we can see now it's always moving forward. And this time in value, I'm going to control drag here to the end. And look at that. So that's going to be this always persistent moving forward thing. And that's cool because I've got a rate slider, so now I can control the rate of that. I want it to be really fast, or want it to be really slow. I want to create a look that looks something like this. I want to give everybody a seizure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take then the audio analysis value, and I'm going to use that as a data source. I'm going to use peak frequency magnitude. And this is giving me negative and positive values. I just want positive values, so Option drag again to control them in. And check this out. So it's very audio responsive. I think it's a little intense here up at 8. I'm going to change the max down to 4. Great. So that's the basic kind of setup. I can now use the sine wave as well because it's being driven by the audio just about anywhere I like. So where do I want to set that? Like maybe I could set that for the rectangle width, or the stroke size could come in and come out based on, I think let's go ahead and have the size of the stroke be controlled by a sine wave. So I'll do the same thing. I'm going to limit the max there, and I'm going to control drag that. And so now that's actually just going to kind of oscillate up and oscillate down based on audio coming in and driving the rate. Great. Just one last thing that I like to do a lot, particularly when I'm having audio values come in. I could definitely have audio maybe directly impact the width of these rectangles. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have audio come in directly, peak frequency magnitude, but then I'm just going to smooth the value out a little bit. And to do that, I'm going to come into my UI inspector. I'm going to inspect that UI element. I'm going to edit the number effects chain, and I'm going to add an asset, and the asset I'm going to add is smooth, and I'm going to smooth out that audio quite a bit. Hello, because I want a nice smooth response on that particular audio. I could also add in some fall. Hello. So it takes a while. It takes a while to fall off there. Maybe, I don't know. Great. Okay, so hopefully that gives you an idea. That's just kind of just randomly plugging things into other things, which is of course the fun of VDMX. That's basically the process by which I created this first preset. Let's check out a couple of the other ones. I've also updated my ShapeMaker plugin with a couple of other goodies, so I want to share those with you guys too.